Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Andy Walsh with us. Andy is a startup strategist from idea to impact. He's a 3x founder, has 2x exits. He's an angel and advisor, chief incubation officer, community catalyst, and a podcast host. He's in New York. I'm in Oaxaca. This podcast is presented to you by podper.com. If you want to start your own pod, we help you monetize it through YouTube AdSense, through lead generation and sponsors. We have a free ebook and a free masterclass on our website if you want to go to podper.com. Andy, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah. Hey, Charles. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be on the other side of the microphone. So, yeah, my background, I'm Australian. I've been in New York, though, for 12 years. I came over here to start a business that we split into two, and then we exited both of those. And it sort of changed the trajectory of my life, I guess, as far as shifting from music culture, which is my background. I spent a lot of time working with brands like big global brands, the likes of Visa, Microsoft, I get Red Bull, other ones that are very much sort of in that creative culture space. And then that was my business here. And then that business, the first one was called Listen, was audio branding work. So doing product sounds for some major global brands as well. And then on the other side was very sort of forward music tech collaboration. So VR, AR, video games. Post exit, I did some consulting, startup work as well. But now I'm actually at a venture studio called Nobody Studios, chief incubation officer, as you said. I've been there for about a year. My job is working and collaborating with the studio internally to prototype and build ideas, and then working with the portfolio to nurture our companies from everything from sales, marketing, operations, etc. So pretty broad. I've got a lot of advisor roles that I do, mentorship, and spend a lot of my time giving back to the startup world.
Cool. And when's your next startup due?
There's one that I'm working on right now as a mentor, an advisor that it has a wait list and hopefully will be live in the next probably 2 to 6 weeks. And then on the Nobody Studio side, we're going through let's call it a bit of a shift on our thesis on the sense of how we work. And I think the last 12 months, like everybody else, has clearly changed the landscape on how you create companies, scale companies, etc. So we're sort of doubling down on some new technology at the moment to look at how we then create companies in a way that is more future-proof and sustainable from a AI perspective in particular.
Yeah, I meant on your side, like when is your next startup?
My next startup?
Yes.
For me personally, I'm not sure I would do a startup directly again. My passion is very much in early stage startups. I'm working a lot at the moment, as I said, on the advisor role, mentorship. If there was something that's really jumped out to me as far as an opportunity, then I'd probably find it hard to say no. But creating something new right now is something I'm not looking to do, aside from my podcast, which is more something I'm doing for fun rather than a proper startup project.
And why is that? Like, have you had a hard time with your own startups? Is the game not for you?
Like every startup, it's a challenge to be able to come up with the right idea, launch it, and then run that business and be able to turn it into something that's financially sustainable. The business that I had, we bootstrapped that, so we had no external capital. So within that, you're always looking at cash flow. Cash flow is critical. If you don't have a healthy pipeline, then it's very easy to go out of business. And when you grow your team and you have wages to pay for and try and live yourself, there's a lot that goes into that. I love that. And it's not that I don't want to. I think for the moment, I'm playing a role in those early stage startups in different ways. So at Nobody Studios, we're creating companies as part of that. Me personally, I'm not sure what the future looks like, but for the moment, I'm happy at the venture studio.
Right. And what's the modern way to build a SaaS without necessarily relying on venture capital? Can one do that with AI and just agents, bootstrap?
Yeah, it's a good question. And right now, there's obviously a lot of people that are testing and learning that as far as how you build a prototype, how you get early customers, how you look at the retention of those customers, and then build something that has scale. The thing right now is that getting a prototype and getting customers, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's definitely easier than what it has been previously. I think the challenge that we're seeing or starting to see now is the scale part. If you're have a small team and you're building a SaaS product and you want to have not only a robust product, but also a robust sales process and client retention process, like it's pretty hard right now to be able to be like a solo founder of sorts and rely on an AI software because you're going to have holes. And until it gets more streamlined and more dependable as far as the various tech stacks that you can use, I think that there's going to be some people that will have some tough times when they go into scale phase.
And tell me about the Nobody Studio business model. So, how did they outreach to you, and what's the business model there? Do they pay you pure equity, or is there also a salary there?
Yeah, so the business is 4 years old. It runs like private equity, so private funding into the studio, then driving a pool of money that's invested into various startups, but those startups are all created internally. So the business model and thesis for us is building our own ideas, building the product, and then validating that with a team of experts who have all worked in startups previously. Some have had exits. There's been a lot of experience around that table, and we use that expertise to validate it and then launch it. For me personally, I joined as an angel investor in 2023 and then joined as an advisor with one of their portfolio companies of Alifi, which is a really sort of simple and clean, ultimately a SaaS product in the B2B space, but it uses AI to be able to search global patents. So if you've got a startup that's in tech and you need a patent, the ability to upload your pitch deck, it will do a global search of every patent in your category and then give you a score based upon the risk as far as are there competitors in that space, who are they, how far through their journey are you. So it allows you to predict the future to a certain degree as far as what challenges that you'll face. So I work with the two founders, Nick and William, as an advisor, and then through that time, Mark and I ended up talking about a more permanent situation, and I joined probably 3 months into that advisor role.
Yeah, I interviewed them on my pod, Alifi. Tell me about your exits. Were they panic exits, or were they profitable soft landing type of exits?
One of each. So the first one, and mind you, the first exit was in 2019, so it snuck in just before the pandemic. So within that, it was more controlled, and the buyout part of that was a 3-year situation. So it ended in 2022, but obviously 2020, 2021, 2022 were very strange years, which impacted the business a lot. So the final exit was probably not what we all wanted, in the sense of capital amount and what went through, but you can't change world events, right? So you just have to accept that for what it is.
Right. And what did you learn out of those exits? And how do you advise founders exit nowadays?
Sorry, you just cut out then a little bit. What did you learn from the exits? And I missed the next part.
Yeah. What did you learn from the exits, and how do founders exit wise nowadays?
Yeah, the exit process is complicated, and I think in our instance there were multiple stakeholders involved. So through that process, you need to sort of make sure that you're buttoned up on the due diligence side. And we were fortunate that our one of our early advisors had really significant global M&A experience. So from an agreement that we had as operators of the company, that at the start through to regular board meetings, compliance, due diligence that you would do through that means building a data room and being able to have all the right information streamlines that process. So having that at hand rather than trying to pull it together at the end is definitely an upside. I think now it's a very different market, of course. The last couple of years, there's not been a lot of exits. IPOs have completely dried up. So I think right now there's a lot of nervous people who are probably looking for exits. And as we know, the market relies upon exits from founders to keep it buoyant from an investment perspective, because quite often if you have an exit, if you're in that space, that capital is then deployed to either start a fund, invest in a fund, invest as an angel. So you have that nice cycle of capital that goes from an exit back into startups and sort of keeps it buoyant. So 2025 is a new year. I think everyone's hoping that we start to see more exits, more IPOs, and get some more capital back into that space.
Love it. And as the chief innovation officer, what does innovation means to you nowadays? How do you get these new ideas? How do you calculate their profitability, their impact, their effectiveness? And what is the system that you have to spread innovation at scales in the startup you're advising?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, the venture studio model is different for different companies. And the way that we work is that we have a process that we've created called Frugressive, which is a combination of frugal and aggressive as a term. There's 5 stages in that process. And each of those 5 stages has a validation process that goes into it. So when you've got experienced operators around a table who understand building out pipeline, forecasting budget, operating costs, etc., through to marketing and sales, what you need to do to basically build out a healthy runway for revenue, making sure that you're keeping that business independent and not reliant on external capital, through to looking at understanding audiences. So how do you build product strategy? How do you validate? How do you retain audiences on that part? So each of those sort of 3 core disciplines are applied in those validation steps to migrate from one stage to the next. So for us, we can kill an idea if we don't feel it's strong. And through that time as well, sometimes the market will change. And right now you're seeing the market shift a lot as far as new companies, new competitors, new speeds. There's things that you can't literally plan for. So all that sort of internal work, but also external factors go into allowing us to make the right decisions based upon a range of input, which is qualitative and quantitative on our side.
Right. And tell me about the podcast angle you're going for. Why are you bullish on podcasts?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's obviously a huge spike in people creating podcasts, but also consumption of podcasts through the pandemic. It's been in decline since then. For me, I find it a really interesting forum to have interesting conversations around the world of startups. What I do from mentorship, advisory roles, ambassador roles in different companies is giving back. So there's a lot that I've learned in my, 12, 13 years of being in the startup ecosystem that I like to give back. So for me, it's talking to the right people that I've built relationships with over a long period of time, helping impart their knowledge on lots of people and just spark those interesting conversations. My real main goal within that is to help build narratives that allows other people to learn. It's not sort of looking back and any nostalgic reasons. It's actually, what's the world we live in today? What are the tools we can use to be able to grow and let people genuinely learn from that? It's really, really important that we're always giving back and helping that startup world and founders grow and be the best they can be.
And who's going to be your ICP for the podcast? Who are you going to interview precisely?
Yeah, so I'm talking to primarily founders. I would say that it's a mix of probably 70% founders, 30% VCs. There might be a few outliers in there that come from different categories, but the focus is very much around how do we create this world where VCs and startups both are really intertwined in a way that's mutually beneficial. My personal opinion is that the way that VCs invest right now means that they'll put capital in. Sometimes a business doesn't go the way they want in their portfolio, and they're left to their own devices to be able to navigate it themselves. And I'm a big believer that if you nurture your portfolio as far as like giving them advice, giving them resources to help them grow and sustain, we can actually drive greater returns on those funds. But we can also have businesses sustain much longer. So you have more jobs in market. You don't have that collapse of businesses. If their businesses serving other businesses, there's obviously a flow-on effect for that, for the people that they're working with from a customer perspective. So the more that we can make that sustainable, for me, is a real mission to be able to make that happen. So I love to be able to connect the two and get both sides, but try and find a way to make that mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I like that. How are you gonna monetize it though?
Right now, I'm not looking at monetizing it. I'm doing it because I'm passionate about this space. I find it's good for me to build new connections. I have various communities that I'm a part of here in New York, particularly on the tech side. So I attend events a lot. I'm meeting new people, but I find that doing these kind of conversations, it's shared across multiple people's personal social channels, company social channels, and it allows me to sort of make new connections and even introduce people that I know from my network into someone else's network as well. So I've already found that a lot of people are reaching out saying, hey, really enjoyed that. How do I get in touch with that person? And connecting people outside of me is something that is very rewarding personally.
Yeah, quite bullish on that. The passion was also what got me to launch this podcast, just that without profits, nothing can scale, right? So you
Yeah.
sort of have to mix both. And yeah, who knows? You might have deals come to you and memos come to you by just referring people out, or get consulting clients, for example, which I would sort of advise to pitch on the back end of the podcast. Do you have plans on bringing sponsors on as well, or you want to sponsor yourself or just be independent on that level?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it's independent, but I have a good network of people that would sponsor it. So my background is in creative agencies. My business here, I had major global corporations. So I've got that network. And then I've also got a lot of people that specifically service the startup and VC community, the likes of various banks, financial institutions, generally insurance, like people that are service providers in the enterprise world. There's a lot of folks that the people that I talk to are relevant. So I'd like to introduce that, but it's not my sole purpose, as I said. The way that I ideally like to do it, kind of like what you're doing in a way too, is like, how do you have a genuine conversation first? Like, actually, how do you help solve people's problems? And then if they have a product that's relevant to that, I feel like actually doing that versus having ads or branding and things is a much more like considerate way to be able to share intel rather than just dropping traditional sponsorship packages in.
Right. Tell me about the startups you currently mentor. We've talked about Evalify, but which one are you most bullish about? I also see Next Found Artists here and PhotoSesh, for example.
Yeah, so there too. Next Found Artists, I just joined only 2 weeks ago, but I love the platform. So Rachel, who's the CEO and founder, it's a platform for movie content, but its unique angle is it's very much open to independent filmmakers. And I'm not sure how much you know about the film industry, but right now it's very mass and mainstream. So the movie houses and the producers that are investing money are often looking for the big hits to make money. So an independent film has been in decline for a few years. So to service those people, there's a lot of people that love independent film but don't really have a place to find it now. So you could probably go into the likes of YouTube and find something, but it's a bit of a mess in YouTube to actually find stuff that you like. So this is highly curated content. But the other side of the business too is that it's very focused on diversity. So people that typically may not be represented, and there's a great stat that Rachel has which is a survey that happened in the USA that 75% of Americans don't feel represented in mainstream movie and TV shows as well. So you could have someone who has a disability, someone who looks a certain way, someone who has a certain religion. But what the ideal of that platform is to actually showcase these people. So it's connecting audiences and filmmakers, allowing that to be a place that they can come together, but then also allow people who invest in movies to be able to find talent that they can use to be able to co-create together as well. So I'm excited about that for many reasons. One, because I think it's a great business, but two, I think it can have a very positive change on society as far as exposure and representation. PhotoSesh, I love. It's just a really simple business model, but something that's very scalable. So Chris, the CEO, their business, they have about 10,000 photographers across the US and Europe. And what they're doing is photographing a lot of, I guess, restaurants, retail stores, etc., that are remote and isolated. So say you have a chain store of a fast food place and they have 300 locations across the US. What they do is go and photograph the arrival as you're driving up to it, what the signs look like, the parking, etc. And it's all built around optimization for search. So if you're searching, you're on a freeway, you need somewhere to get lunch, you'll search, and rather than just see the name, you'll see photographs. So it's like wayfinding in a way. So they're already seeing huge results for the people that spend money to get more foot traffic into these places on roadside destinations to actually drive sales. So it's just a very simple model, but it's something that technology can't replace in the sense of AI. You actually have to have boots on ground. So I've been with them for a few months, but it's like they're already from a revenue perspective and they're doing solid work. So they're at a scale phase right now, whereas Next Found Artists are very much in that early stage.
And last, tell me about Method. How much do you charge? What's the business model? What's your GTM strategy with that one?
Yeah, so I had Method. I started it probably 2 years ago. When I joined Nobody, the venture studio, I sort of parked it a little bit. But as far as the intent with it and what I used to do with it, it was very much consulting, but working with young founders, so early stage founders in various ways. And a lot of it is equity based earning. But from a go to market point of view, I rely heavily on my personal network and my network. So who do I meet? I go to a lot of events. I meet founders all the time. So for me, it's been able to handpick the ones that I think are outliers. I like finding businesses that are in categories that are quite unique, have unique founders, ones that aren't coming from Ivy League universities. They live in remote locations. They may have diversity from a cultural perspective, ones that have an interesting story. And they're the ones that I typically sort of gravitate to.
Right. And your fees, what do you charge typically? What's the GTM strat behind that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. So I don't necessarily want to share the full model, but the way that I would do it would be on a project based. So you would have a fee that's fixed to have certain deliverables. That way the scope is fixed. You both know what you're getting. I know how much time I need to invest, and the client has a good sense of what they're going to get from me. So like it's very clear on that side. And it can be a combination of a project fee and equity. It can be all equity. It's very sort of case by case, depending on the stage of the business and their cash flow.
Love it. Thank you so much for the value you've added today, Andy. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I would say to come to my website, which is themethod.co. If you're interested in the venture studio, it's nobodystudios.com. And then my Substack as well, which is themethod.substack.com. So lots of places there to chat to me on, but yeah, doing some fun work. 2025 is going to be a big year for us. 2024 was a lot of change for all of us. So I feel more confident about this year.
Andy Walsh and Charles Cormier.